It was a cold November night, the 9th of '89. A massive crowd was gathering, their breath fogging in the chilly air, right up against the cold gray concrete of the Berlin Wall. This wasn't just any wall. It was the infamous barrier that had brutally sliced a nation, a city, and countless families in two for nearly 3 decades. Tonight, though, something was different. People were shouting, some were crying, others were laughing with a joy that felt forbidden. And for the first time in as long as anyone could remember, the guards weren't stopping them. The world was glued to its television screens, watching history crack wide open. But what nobody, absolutely nobody, saw coming was the sheer speed of it all. The Berlin Wall, the most potent symbol of the Cold War's bitter division, didn't fall because of a war, an invasion, or a grand political treaty. It collapsed because of a chaotic cocktail of confusion, raw courage, and an overwhelming surge of hope. You're watching Biography Plus, and today, we're taking you back to the night the world changed forever. The night the wall fell faster than anyone could have possibly imagined. Let's rewind a bit. Back in 1961, the wall was erected with brutal efficiency. Its purpose was chillingly simple: to keep people in, not out. East Germany, under the thumb of the Soviet Union, was hemorrhaging its population. Doctors, engineers, artists, ordinary families, they were fleeing to the West by the thousands, seeking freedom and opportunity. The regime's answer was to build a prison of concrete and barbed wire. Overnight, families were split down the middle. Lovers found themselves on opposite sides of an impassable barrier. For 28 long, agonizing years, the Berlin Wall was more than just a structure. It was a scar across the heart of Europe, a daily reminder of a world divided. Friends who lived just streets apart might as well have been on different planets. Escape attempts were common, and many were tragic, ending in heartbreak at the foot of the wall. It was a symbol of oppression, a monument to fear. But by the late 1980s, the political ground beneath the Eastern Bloc was shaking. The foundations of communism were crumbling. In Poland, the Solidarity movement had gained incredible momentum. Hungary had begun dismantling its border fences with Austria, creating the first small crack in the Iron Curtain. Czechoslovakia was stirring with what would soon be called the Velvet Revolution. The winds of change were blowing, and in East Germany the pressure had reached a boiling point. For weeks, people had been taking to the streets, not with weapons or Molotov cocktails, but with candles and unwavering courage. Peaceful protests, known as the Monday demonstrations, grew larger and larger. Their chant, "Wir sind das Volk," "We are the people," echoed through the streets of Leipzig, Dresden, and eventually East Berlin itself. It was a simple, powerful declaration. The state did not own them. They were the nation. Inside the halls of the East German government, there was a palpable sense of panic. The old guard was losing its grip. Frantic meetings were held. Confusing memos were passed around, and desperate phone calls were made to Moscow, which offered little in the way of support. Everyone in power could feel that something monumental was about to happen, but no one had a clear plan. They were reacting, not leading. The system was breaking down from the inside, hollowed out by its own rigidity and the unstoppable will of its people. The government was trapped between trying to appease the protesters and trying to maintain control, a balancing act that was doomed to fail. And then, in the midst of this confusion and desperation, came the slip-up, the historical accident, the mistake that would trigger an avalanche. It all came down to a routine press conference on the evening of November 9th. An East German official named Günter Schabowski, a member of the Politburo, was tasked with announcing new travel regulations. The government, trying to ease the public pressure, had decided to allow citizens to apply for visas to travel. But the plan was supposed to be rolled out in an orderly fashion the next day. Schabowski, however, had just returned from a trip and hadn't been properly briefed on the details. He was handed a note with the new policy just moments before he went on air. Towards the end of the press conference, a journalist from Italy, Riccardo Ehrman, asked a crucial question. When do these new rules take effect? Schabowski, looking flustered, shuffled through his papers. He couldn't find a date. Under the glare of the cameras and the pressure of the moment, he improvised, uttering the words that would change the world. As far as I know, this is effective immediately, without delay. Those words were broadcast live on television. Across East Berlin, people watching at home stared at their screens in disbelief. Did he just say, immediately? The news spread like wildfire. Telephones rang off the hook. Neighbors knocked on doors. People poured out of their apartments and into the streets, a rumor turning into a collective belief, a belief turning into action. The borders are open. The wall is open. First it was a trickle, then a stream, then a flood of people, all heading towards the heavily fortified checkpoints that had been symbols of their confinement for a generation. They marched with a mixture of excitement and trepidation, demanding to be let through. They were no longer asking for permission. They were claiming their right. At the Bornholmer Strasse checkpoint, the guards were completely overwhelmed. The crowd grew larger and louder, pressing against the gates. The man in charge, Lieutenant Colonel Harald Jaeger, was in an impossible position. He made frantic phone calls to his superiors, desperate for orders. Should he use force? Should he open fire? The chilling silence on the other end of the line told him everything he needed to know. No one was in charge. No one was going to give him an order. The decision was his. And then, at around 11:30 p.m., something extraordinary happened. Harald Jaeger looked out at the endless sea of faces, families with children on their shoulders, elderly couples holding hands, young people singing with hope in their eyes. He saw not a threat, but his own people. And he made the decision of his life. He gave the order. Open the barrier. In that single electrifying moment, 28 years of fear, division, and oppression evaporated like smoke in the night air. The gates swung open, and people surged through. There were tears, cheers, and embraces between total strangers. East and West Berliners, separated for a lifetime, were suddenly reunited. People climbed onto the wall itself, that monstrous symbol of hate, and began to dance. They brought hammers and chisels, chipping away at the concrete, taking home pieces of their former prison. The world watched, stunned and overjoyed. For decades, politicians, generals, and spies had war-gamed scenarios for the end of the Cold War, almost all of them involving conflict and bloodshed. Yet here it was, ending not with bombs and ultimatums, but with champagne, music, and pure, unadulterated joy. It was a perfect storm of human factors. One misread note by a nervous official, one brave border guard who chose humanity over orders, and millions of ordinary people who were ready to cast off their fear and demand their freedom. By the morning of November 10th, the Berlin Wall, a structure that took years and immense resources to build, was being dismantled by the bare hands of the very people it was designed to imprison. Within a year, Germany was officially reunified. Some call it a miracle. Others call it destiny. But perhaps, most accurately, it was simply the moment when fear lost its power, and the collective hope of a people became an unstoppable force. The fall of the Berlin Wall wasn't a meticulously planned event. It was born from chaos, propelled by courage, and ultimately realized by a simple human truth. It stands as a timeless testament that no wall, no matter how high or imposing, can ever permanently contain the dreams of people who yearn to be free. And on that unforgettable night, Berlin didn't just celebrate the end of a division. It celebrated the triumphant beginning of a new era of hope. You've been watching Biography Plus. If you believe that history truly belongs to those who dare to hope against all odds, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Stories like this are a powerful reminder that freedom, in the end, always finds a way. Thanks for watching.